Well, we are here at the end of season 1 of Silo. I believe season 2 has already been ordered, it's already been renewed. But we have the final episode of the season. It's called Outside, it's episode 10. And I was very critical on the last video I did about episodes 8 and 9. Not even specifically about those episodes, just kind of generally about the season as a whole. And my feelings on the pacing and the characters and just everything, right? I don't want to repeat it all. Um, and I said in that last video that even if the finale's a 10 out of 10, it won't make up for the majority of the season being as slow and dull as it was. And the finale's not a 10, but it is better. It's definitely got the most in it happening since like episode 3, probably. And some things came to pass. I theorized it might end with the door in the basement, and down the water. It did not. It ended with Juliet going out to clean. Which makes a lot of sense. We spent so much focus on that in the first couple of episodes with other characters that it made sense to come back to that as the final payoff of the show. With seemingly better tape from Martha, keeping her alive. And obviously a couple of reveals to go along with that. The two real things that are revealed in this ending are, one, that it is post-apocalyptic, that the happy, healthy-looking planet is a lie, which is something I actually even theorized. Back in like episode 1 or 2 when we first saw that, I think it was especially when Holston went out, so the second time we saw someone go out, the way it was presented just seemed too perfect, to the point where it was fake. And you even notice here, now that we're seeing it for like the third time, between the video clip and people going out, is that there's like the same formation of birds going past. So very quickly it becomes clear that that is the lie, and that the reality is this post-apocalyptic wasteland, which is, it's fine. It does beg the question, which could have some interesting answers as to why this fake, why there's this like double bluff of the outside world. Is it simply so that anyone who does get curious is like convinced of something wrong and will ultimately always be proving wrong to discredit them? Is it to make them basically ask the wrong questions so they're not asking the real things that are to uncover? There's a lot of interesting possibilities from that, from a conceptual point of view. And then the other big thing at the end here is that very quickly you notice that there are other silos. There's other exits and circular kind of parts of the ground that look just the same as the one she came out of. And it's like, okay, there are possibly hundreds of these things, which is conceptually kind of fascinating, because it does raise some interesting questions. Obviously this is Silo 18, just based on the number that's on Tim Robbins' key and the hard drive. It makes sense that this is number 18, and it also actually kind of indirectly probably answers the other mystery, which is the door at the bottom of the silo, which when she mentions it to Tim Robbins, he does sort of have a bit of a reaction to that. I think that is probably just a back door to another silo. They're probably all connected at the bottom for reasons, and maybe they were closed off during the rebellion or something, which leads to why I think it's fascinating that there are silos. Well, first of all, it makes me think of Fallout again. I compared this a lot to Fallout in the first couple of episodes because of the computers, because of the idea of the shelter, and the post-apocalypse. But the fact that there's multiple just makes me think of Fallout more, because there's multiple vaults in Fallout. But what's so fascinating about that is the idea that, okay, this silo had this weird rebellion, and the winning party seems to have erased all existence of evidence of what came before the silo. So no one in this silo that we've been following knows about the world, knows about the past, knows about anything. But the other silos might not be that way. The other silos might have a museum for the past. They might be all about remembering what the world was and hope to one day go back into it. And there's, so many possibilities, because that could be one silo. There could be another silo where everyone's dead because everyone like wards so much that they're all just gone. There could be another silo where, I don't know, disease spread and they're all dead from that. There could be another silo where maybe it's more of a outright dictatorship than the one we have, even though it feels like it's kind of a secret dictatorship in a way, with the secret police and all that stuff. You know, like, there could be very different types of societies in each one, depending on how they've developed and depending on what the beliefs of the people in those silos are. Do the people in the other silos know about other silos? Are the other silos all in contact with each other? Is that intentionally what it's meant to be like? Was that the big thing the rebellion tried to do away with? Was the idea that they don't want everyone to know that there's other silos? At least in this one silo, there's like, no, we want to be cut off from them. We don't want to be influenced by them. Maybe they blocked that door at the bottom or something. Whatever. Because I suspect, given that Juliet clearly is alive at the end of this and is going wandering, like, she's probably going to go into another silo. In season 2, we'll probably still see this silo in season 2, but a lot of season 2 will probably be her getting to know characters in another silo, and all the things that might reveal and uncover, and probably they'll try and contact each other. Maybe the fact that Martha has a lot of like radio systems and things like that. It doesn't answer why there's no magnifying glasses yet, but like that's the sort of thing that might come up. Because maybe the other silos have different rules. Maybe they don't have the pact, or they have a different pact. And it'll maybe show how different societies form based on what type of people are in them, or like just how something going slightly different in one, almost like an alternate reality story, where you're talking about like, oh, if one decision changed the course of like this version of Earth compared to the other. You can effectively do those ideas, but just with these different silos, because they're all just completely self-contained. Like, Juliet going to another silo is just like going to a different planet in another science fiction story. You know, it's a completely new civilization to her. Yes, they're still human. They'll still be speaking English because they all came from the same, world from before. But those are interesting ideas. Like, I can see why the books are probably quite good. I can see why the books probably work much better than the show does. Because as much as I'm praising these concepts, because the concepts have never been the problem with the show, the broad science fiction concepts that are all sort of teased here with this ending are all very, very solid. The problem is that for the last 7 episodes or so, it has been painfully slow and dull with characters, and it really stuck out to me this episode as well, how much more likable and interesting the characters at the bottom of the silo are. Like, not just Martha, but even her friend, and like even when they're like arguing with each other about turning Juliet in, it kind of felt like, oh, these are characters. They actually, like, what little we've got about them actually gives me more to work with than, Sims, who's just always kind of like mean and suspicious of everyone, like, I don't think the show would necessarily be amazing if it focused on them, but maybe like having more of them would have helped balance things out. I don't know. They make a big deal, of course, of Martha leaving her place. They kind of teased this last episode or two, where she goes to the door and asks for someone, and she gets kind of scared because she's right at the door. Here, like, there is something nice about the idea of her like overcoming her fear to leave her little apartment to save Juliet, and it seems like she probably did save Juliet. It was probably her fancy tape that did it. Like, that's like a potentially heartwarming thing. She's like one of the few characters who's consistently been shown to be on her side, to be this old friend that she trusted even before she went upstairs and all that stuff. So, yeah, but I realized, oh yeah, we spent this time setting up a lot of these characters back in like episode 3 mainly, and then we have just been gone from them pretty much. We've seen Martha a few times, and maybe the cop like once, but like the friend character, the guy who runs the place down there, like a lot of these characters have been absent. So yeah, I think, and maybe it's just because I find so many of the characters upstairs dull, and I think it's because all the conspiracy of the janitors and the people who are running this particular silo, it's all just been kind of typical conspiracy stuff, which I guess leads to the truth about George, that he did commit suicide. Which, okay, yeah. I mean, I've been on the record repeatedly that I don't really care about George that much. So I don't really care that much about his death. I am glad the last couple minutes did give us some new concepts to play with, because it did feel like throughout a lot of the episode it wasn't expand. Like, it kept kind of like teasing that it was expanding. Like, broadcasting the outside world, the what turns out to be fake, healthy outside world footage. Like, that doesn't happen because they put a stop to it. It's only Sims, like computer guys in the surveillance room that see it. But like, I got a little frustrated, like, oh, okay, we've cut that off. Okay, we keep cutting things off in this show, but we've cut that off now. But even later, when the mayor's like, okay, we'll show you what happened to George, we'll reveal secrets before you go out as a deal for you, like just going along with everything. And there's a whole big deal made out of her going into the janitor's room and getting into the camera surveillance room. And it just kind of, like, most of it was like, we've already seen all this as the audience. I mean, obviously the George footage is new when we finally get to that. But even as we're walking in and the music's ramping up, it's making a big deal. And all I could think was, yeah, but we've been in here repeatedly for the last like 3 or 4 episodes. So it didn't really feel like a big deal that much. I know that for the character it's a big deal, but it's still shot like it's a big deal for the audience as well. And I don't think those two things, sync up very well. Anyway, what else is there to talk about with this one? There's the sort of the action set piece, if you want to call it that, a Juliet climbing up and down the garbage shaft, which they established to have this early. Actually, it felt like kind of weird to me though, because like it was just the last episode, I think, or maybe it was the episode before, but one of the last 2 episodes, there was a whole thing where she wanted to get the hard drive down to Martha, but couldn't go down because there was checkpoints on the stairs, and it never came up that there was an alternate way to get down. So it's funny how this was immediately a solution that she thought of here, but it never came up there, when it could have just been a way to do it. That's different from like trusting all these other people that she sort of got involved with over the last episode or 2. So that's a little bit strange. But the actual set piece of them like just dumping stuff down the chute to try and knock her off the ladder was entertaining enough. And then her having to make the leap and just fall when the big like washing machine or whatever it was coming down after her. All decent enough actiony stuff. It was definitely more going on than previous episodes. Billings didn't end up with a whole lot, I would say, in this finale. It just kind of establishes that Sims knows about his sickness, but is going to give him a pass, and it seems like he's getting a pass because that way they can control him better, because he's been giving this charity effectively, you've been given this important role out of our kindness. So I think it's a way to try and keep him in line. If, whether or not it does in the long term, I would imagine eventually he will stick up for himself or stick up for what he believes in. But it really only amounted to a couple of scenes in this episode. So, yeah, I mean, I think the big thing for me here is the ideas the ending introduces and reveals by seeing the other silos, by seeing that it really is the post-apocalypse. Like, that stuff is fine. Conceptually, it's good. Like, I understand why this was adapted into a series. It's the actual episode-to-episode drama with the characters and the way they don't really have anything to... Like, because there's not more to the mysteries for them to tell until this next until this final bit of the season where they've got something big to actually show us and tell us, there was really nothing they could give us throughout the season. So there was nothing fulfilling happening as they were unraveling things, because they weren't really unraveling, they were just kind of going around in circles with the infinite red tape, as I was talking about, until it was time, it's the end of the season, we can finally do something now. This is a problem that I've been feeling with a lot of streaming shows over the last 5 years or so. I think Netflix, of course, have been the most guilty of it. It's something I felt in a lot of their stuff. But it really stuck out here to me, because as good as the concepts were, I was just feeling frustrated and frankly bored throughout a lot of the episodes throughout the season. This finale is better, and I kind of predicted it was going to be better, because frankly, it's time to actually do something, and because it's in that same way with most TV shows where in a finale, you feel like maybe an important character will die. Like, maybe that'll happen, right? It's really shocking when it happens in the middle of a season. But typically in a finale, you might believe, maybe they'll kill off one of the bigger supporting characters. But most of the time, you don't believe it'll happen. right? And sometimes it comes to pass, and you know, like that's kind of like this here, except it's with the entire plot. Like all of the interesting stuff wasn't allowed to happen after the opening until the ending of the season, and a lot of the middle was just dull. And then there's the added problem that I talked a lot about in the first half of the season, which is all of the interesting characters were killed off really early. The two most interesting characters were both dead by the end of the second episode. But then we had a second tier of characters, such as the deputy and the mayor at the time, who weren't as interesting, but certainly there was some stuff to get from them. I think the main thing that felt like it was missing was Holston's deputy. Like his mistrust and not wanting to really entertain Juliet as like a new colleague and friend, that seemed like that was potentially going to be the heart of the arc of the season, which is him learning to like trust her and believe in what she wants to do. But obviously we never got that because he was just killed within like another episode after the mayor died. So we were left with Tim Robbins, who's like phoning in his performance. We're left with Sims, who feels just like really one note as a character to me. And we're left with, who killed George? Who's covering things up? That's what most of the middle of the season was. And I guess the father-daughter relationship with her dad, which I never really bought into either. So, needless to say, did not like season 1 of Silo very much. I think the concepts are strong. The book is probably quite good, or at least similarly has good concepts. I mean, I have no idea if the writing quality is any good. But I can't recommend Silo. Even as someone who these types of concept appeal to, even as someone who is into this type of stuff, I cannot recommend this. I just don't think it's written very well. I don't think it's paced very well. And I think it could really do with much better creators behind the helm. And I'm someone who can enjoy a good mystery box show. I loved Lost. I think Lost was great. Lost had great pacing. By and large, Lost had interesting characters. And it managed to like sustain a lot more episodes and still be quite interesting. That's not to say it never had a bad episode and there was never times where it felt like it was drawing things out, but by and large there was a lot of juicy stuff at a frequent enough pace, and even when there wasn't, a lot of the characters were quite interesting in their own right. You know, like when you got to Benjamin Linus, he was just fascinating to watch and sort of see what made him tick. There's no one like that in this show, as far as I'm concerned. So yep, that's my thoughts on the Silo finale. I have nothing else to really add. I'd just be repeating a lot of what I said last episode. So thank you very much for joining. You can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, and that'll about do it. Whether or not I will look at season 2, I will say probably not. The only circumstance in which I will review season 2, well, there's two circumstances. One is that there is nothing else to watch when it's out, and I might be mildly curious. And two, that it has unanimous praise for being a huge improvement over season 1. And I mean, like, people are saying it's night and day, and it's a shocking turnaround. Because season 1 was not good. It suffered from a lot of modern show problems, and I can't, recommend it. So, thank you for joining me. I will see you guys soon for other TV shows. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?